Shocking. Britain's military chiefs just defied Keir Starmer's direct order to deploy troops to Ukraine, declaring they won't sacrifice British soldiers for his political agenda. Emergency meetings at Whitehall confirmed generals told the Prime Minister that his war escalation is illegal, reckless and impossible. And what happened next has Parliament whispering the word nobody thought possible: coup. If you want to see unprecedented military rebellion against a sitting Prime Minister, hit that subscribe button right now, because Britain is entering uncharted territory. Here's what sparked the most dangerous civil-military crisis in British history. 5 days ago, Starmer secretly promised Zelensky he would deploy 30,000 British troops to western Ukraine. Not advisors, not peacekeepers, but combat forces ready for direct confrontation with Russia. The commitment was made without consulting the defence chiefs, without parliamentary approval, without even informing his own defence secretary. John Healey discovered Britain was going to war through a leaked diplomatic cable yesterday morning. His resignation letter was on Starmer's desk within the hour. But General Sir Patrick Sanders wasn't having any of it. The Chief of Defence Staff convened every service chief at permanent joint headquarters at 6 a.m. today. Their message to Starmer was brutally clear: the British military will not deploy to Ukraine under current circumstances. They cited legal concerns, capability gaps, and the absence of NATO authorisation. The primary explosion came at this morning's emergency cabinet when defence officials delivered their verdict. General Sanders' exact words were devastating. The Prime Minister's unilateral commitment exceeds his constitutional authority and the military's current capabilities. The confrontation was unprecedented in modern British history. Within minutes, WhatsApp messages between ministers described scenes of complete chaos. Sources inside the Ministry of Defence confirm at least 12 senior officers have threatened resignation. According to military sources, the armed forces have lost all confidence in civilian leadership. The scale of Starmer's deception is staggering beyond comprehension. He promised British forces that don't exist for a deployment Britain cannot sustain. We're talking about sending more troops than the entire British Army has available for deployment. Meanwhile, British forces who signed up to defend their nation are being volunteered for potential nuclear confrontation. Corporal James Matthews, who served 3 tours in Afghanistan, spoke anonymously to us. His unit was told to prepare for immediate deployment to Ukraine last week. They haven't seen their families in months due to endless training rotations. While Matthews prepares to leave his 2 young children fatherless, Starmer plays strategic games from Downing Street's safety. We're talking about politicians who avoided military service sending working-class soldiers to die. The contrast is so obscene, so morally repugnant, that military families are organising nationwide protests. Sarah Williams, whose son serves in the Parachute Regiment, broke down during our interview. Former Chief of Defence Staff Lord Richards called it the most irresponsible decision by any Prime Minister ever. But then something unprecedented happened that shattered all constitutional norms completely. King Charles summoned the defence chiefs to Windsor Castle without informing Downing Street. At the 3-hour emergency meeting, military leaders briefed the monarch on the crisis. His Majesty expressed grave concerns about commitments made without proper military consultation. The palace confirmed. The king reportedly reminded generals that their oath is to crown and country, not political convenience. Palace insiders revealed Charles is prepared to intervene if the crisis threatens national security. Senior courtiers say the monarch views this as Starmer endangering the realm itself. The optics are beyond catastrophic for a Prime Minister who's lost both military and royal confidence. The dominoes started falling faster than anyone could have predicted possible. Defence contractor shares crashed 40% as investors fled uncertainty. £8 billion got wiped from aerospace and defence valuations within hours. NATO ambassadors held emergency consultations about Britain's reliability as an alliance member. The hashtag number #NotOurWar has been trending globally with 5 million posts hourly. Military recruitment centres report nobody is enlisting while this crisis continues. Protests by military families have shut down roads outside every major base. Inside number 10, Starmer's government is disintegrating faster than anyone imagined. Foreign Secretary David Lammy allegedly told Starmer he was completely insane before storming out. Rachel Reeves was overheard saying, "He's destroyed Britain's standing for his Messiah complex." WhatsApp groups with names like Remove Starmer Now include over half the cabinet. The question isn't if there's a coup, it's whether it's political or military. Starmer looked completely unhinged during today's press briefing. Sources say he was shouting at journalists. But here's the revelation that could trigger immediate government collapse tonight. Leaked intelligence assessments show Russia has already targeted British forces for retaliation. If these reports are accurate, and if they show what MI6 sources claim, then Starmer knowingly endangered British lives for a photo opportunity with Zelensky. Think about what that means for military morale and national security. British soldiers could die because their Prime Minister wanted headlines. The optics of that would destroy any leader, but for one already facing military rebellion, it's terminal. Meanwhile, both Rishi Sunak and Nigel Farage are positioning themselves as stability candidates. While Starmer creates chaos, they promise to restore civil-military relations and sanity. British forces defend Britain, not foreign political projects, Farage declared to massive crowds. The polls tell an extraordinary story of complete political realignment. Labour has crashed to 11%, while Conservatives hit 46%, and Reform reaches 31%. For the first time ever, Labour is polling fourth behind the Liberal Democrats. The opposition isn't just winning anymore, they're preparing for Labour's complete extinction. The next 48 hours are critical for preventing complete governmental breakdown. Parliament must decide whether to support Starmer's Ukraine deployment without military backing. The defence chiefs are meeting to discuss their response if ordered to deploy anyway. NATO is considering whether Britain remains a reliable alliance partner. Britain is watching civil-military relations collapse in real time with terrifying consequences. This crisis will determine whether civilian control of the military survives intact. At its epicentre stands Keir Starmer, who looks increasingly deranged, isolated and dangerously unstable. But wait, there's an even more explosive dimension emerging from intelligence circles. American officials have privately warned Britain that Starmer's deployment would trigger Article 5 complications. If British forces engage Russian units, it could technically invoke NATO's collective defence clause. The Pentagon is furious that Starmer made commitments affecting alliance security without consultation. Former CIA Director Mike Pompeo called it the most reckless Allied behaviour since Suez. The military rebellion is spreading beyond senior ranks into every level. Regiment commanders are refusing to prepare deployment plans they consider illegal and suicidal. The special forces have reportedly told Starmer they won't participate in Ukraine operations. Even the territorial army is seeing mass resignations rather than potential Ukraine deployment. Military lawyers are preparing legal challenges to any deployment order Starmer might issue. The Judge Advocate General warned that illegal orders need not be obeyed. Inside military bases, the atmosphere is volcanic, with barely contained fury. Soldiers are openly discussing whether their oath permits disobeying catastrophically bad orders. Military wives are organising blockades to prevent any Ukraine deployment from proceeding. Veterans associations representing 2.5 million former service members oppose Starmer's plan unanimously. The Royal British Legion called an emergency meeting to discuss unprecedented political intervention. This isn't just military disagreement, it's the complete breakdown of civilian authority. The constitutional implications are staggering beyond anything Britain has faced before. Without military confidence, can a Prime Minister effectively govern the nation? If the armed forces refuse deployment, who actually controls British defence policy? Can Parliament override military objections to force troops into combat? These questions haven't been asked since Charles I challenged Parliament centuries ago. Constitutional scholars warn Britain is entering its gravest crisis since the Civil War. Financial markets are pricing in potential governmental collapse and military intervention. Gold prices surged 18% as investors seek safety from British chaos. International corporations are activating emergency plans to evacuate UK operations if necessary. Lloyd's of London is refusing to insure any Ukraine-related military activities. The pound has become effectively untradeable as uncertainty paralysed currency markets. Britain's economy cannot survive prolonged civil-military confrontation without complete collapse. But here's what makes this crisis absolutely existential for British democracy. If Starmer attempts forcing deployment through emergency powers, generals might refuse. If he tries removing military leaders, the forces might not recognise replacements. If he backs down, his authority is finished and government collapses anyway. Starmer has created an impossible situation where every option leads to catastrophe. Military historians call it the worst civil-military crisis in any Western democracy. The intelligence services are caught between political leadership and military command. MI6 officers are reportedly refusing to provide intelligence supporting Ukraine deployment. GCHQ has concerns about British forces operating without proper cyber protection. Intelligence officials fear being scapegoated when Starmer's reckless plan inevitably fails. The security establishment's fracturing between Number 10 and military leadership is unprecedented. International allies are watching Britain's crisis with horror and disbelief. France has suspended defence cooperation pending resolution of the command crisis. Germany warned that British instability threatens NATO cohesion at a critical moment. Even Ukraine's military privately admits they don't want unwilling British forces. The special relationship with America is under unprecedented strain over Starmer's recklessness. Britain risks complete international isolation if this crisis continues escalating. So here's the question that will determine Britain's immediate future. Will the military actually defy direct orders from the Prime Minister? Can Starmer survive after losing the confidence of Britain's armed forces? Or are we witnessing the first military coup in British history? What do you think happens if Starmer tries forcing deployment against military advice? Will the King intervene to prevent constitutional breakdown? Could we see generals arrested or Starmer removed by force? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if this military crisis terrifies you like it should, share it with everyone who needs to know that Britain's democracy faces its darkest hour. The mainstream media won't reveal how close we are to complete breakdown, but we will. Tomorrow we're covering Parliament's emergency session where MPs must choose between Starmer and the military. The fate of civilian control over Britain's armed forces hangs in the balance, and the wrong decision could shatter British democracy forever.